Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Clutch Talk podcast / YouTube / We Do It All. As always, I'm your host, John. Very happy to be here. My boy T Riz, what's the deal? How you doing?
Bro, listen, man. I'm about to cook this boy Garrett up, eating my raspberries over here, my cranberry juice. This dude is a Derrick Rose fan who hasn't been good in ages, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, can't wait to cook him up, bro. Just can't
That's
wait to cook this dude up.
that's wild, T. T, you coming out like just off the rip, just shooting shots, throwing shots, man. Big old haymakers, but you said it best, man. You said it. It's our guy Garrett in the building, man. I really don't even have to say it, man. For the OG family, you already know what it is, man. Super Mario Hoops 24, our guy Garrett in the building. How you doing, my dog?
Doing pretty good. Feeling pretty confident going into this debate. Like, I know what Trent said, D Rose hasn't been good in ages. Well, if that's the case, then Westbrook hasn't been good in millennium. So
Hey, y'all, this right here, man. This episode is gonna be it right here, man. So if you clicked on this episode, you already know what it is, man. This is about to be a fire debate, a real debate. This is not gonna be one of those debates where they're yelling over each other and you can't listen to each other's points. We're gonna have a time to give your points, give a rebuttal, go back and forth. And I thought to myself, who better to do this debate than Garrett, the Derrick Rose guy. He's Derrick Rose's number one fan, and Trent T Riz, Russell Westbrook's number one guy, number one fan. So that's what we got here, man. Very similar players in Westbrook and D Rose. So I'm not gonna really do too much talking, man. I just want to let everybody know at home. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Make sure you smash that like button. Go check out all of my guy Garrett's content. It'll be in the description down below. But if all that's out the way, are y'all boys ready to get into this debate? This is going to be a heated debate. Y'all ready?
I don't know how heated it'll be. At least I'm not gonna get heated. I don't know about Trent, but I saw your guys' last episode, and I saw he's getting heated at points during it. So I probably won't get heated, but I think it's gonna be a good debate.
All right, T, you ready? Or you got any words before you
Bro,
get
you're
into
talking too much. Get to the point, bro. Let's go,
dang,
bro.
that's how you feel, T? All right, well, look, here we go. This time I was going to do flip a coin, but I clicked record and I forgot to grab a coin. So this is how we're going to do this. I have a number in my head. Garrett and Trent, go ahead and pick a number and I'll tell you. It's between 1 and 30. I'll pick a number, and then the number's closest. Well, that's who goes first.
17.
I'm picking number 4, like D Rose's number.
It was number 1. So Garrett, you got it.
Yeah. Also another D Rose number, by the way. Just throwing that out there. All right. So you want me to just kind of like go through my main points right now?
Yep. Go ahead and go through your main points, and then after your points, Trent will get a time to rebuttal if that's what you want to do.
Okay, I have like 10 key points, and then I have a few other things, but I'm gonna save the other things for after Trent starts talking. So I guess to start off, D Rose, Russell Westbrook in this debate, pretty much prior to the ACL injury, almost everybody in the world will tell you that Derrick Rose is a better player than Russell Westbrook. In 2009, who won Rookie of the Year? Same draft class, Derrick Rose. In 2010, who was the only member of the 2008 draft that made the All-Star team? Derrick Rose. In 2011, Russell Westbrook, he prances into his first All-Star game. Derrick Rose winning league MVP, youngest ever to do so, while leading his team to the best record in the NBA. Derrick Rose in 2012, he replicated this feat, leading his team to the best record in the NBA. So that's kind of bringing me now to my second point, where let's talk a little bit about that record, being the best player on the best team in the NBA. Did you know that Derrick Rose is only one of 12 players in NBA history to be the best player on a team that had the best record in the NBA for multiple times? The others are George Mikan, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem, Dave Cowens, Larry Bird, Magic, Michael, Tim Duncan, LeBron, Steph, and Giannis. All those guys, if you notice, are on the 75th anniversary team. But Rose also accomplished this feat more times than guys like Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. I know that was tough for John right there saying Kobe, but Kobe, Shaq, Hakeem, my guy, the Big O, Jerry West, Kevin Durant, Karl Malone, D Wade, Dirk, Moses, Dr. J, and of course, Russell Westbrook. In fact, this list, as I said, it's made for guys that have done it multiple times. Westbrook has never done this once, nor has he ever even played on a team with the best record in the NBA. And then in the 2011-2012 season, I feel like this is Derrick Rose's most underrated season in the NBA. Because personally, for me, I know the stats may not indicate it, but just by watching him, I thought he was personally a better player that year than he even was his MVP year. And I do believe he did deserve his MVP because he did deserve his MVP. But as for 2011-2012, you know, for the record, you know, Rose is above Westbrook in MVP voting, despite missing a lot of games in the middle of that season. Since people, again, pretend like he was only a one-hit wonder or something. But in that season, the Bulls were 18-9 without Derrick Rose, which that's pretty good. That's like about a 67% win percentage. It's about 55 win pace. Okay. Pretty good. But with Derrick Rose that year, their record was 32-7. That's above a 67 win pace. The only team with a higher win percentage than that for a season since the turn of the new millennium was the 2016 Warriors. Think about that. Derrick Rose, the next year, had them playing the best team basketball we've seen since 2000, behind only the 73-win Golden State Warriors. They were on track, second best regular season of the whole millennium. So throughout NBA history, 70% of all teams have won 67 or more games in a season and won a championship. And then the only teams in those time in the last 50 years that fell short were those Warriors and the Spurs. We knew both of them couldn't win. One of them was at least going to lose. But the Cavs did beat Golden State that year. And then, of course, the 2007 Mavericks. But what people forget in the 2012 playoffs is that, you know, the Bulls lost. Most people think it's just because Rose got hurt. It's also because Joakim Noah got hurt. So we definitely would not lose round one to Philly against that team. But again, people will say, oh, well, in 2016, the Warriors lost because they lost to LeBron. I'm sure this is probably, again, like what John would say. So LeBron would do the same thing, the same damage to them in 2012. Well, one thing is that the Bulls had in 2012 that neither the 2016 Warriors nor the 2012 Heat nor the 2016 Cavaliers had, is they were a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense, and top 5 in 3-point shooting that year. And again, Rose missed some time, and they were better in all these categories when he did play, especially 3-point shooting. So now more so at attacking individual stuff with Rose, that was more so just to get to the point where his impact is felt bigger than almost anyone could have imagined, especially for people that don't remember him. Because I feel like a lot of guys like that cover the NBA a lot now, like maybe they didn't really get invested into it until after his ACL injury. So if that doesn't tell you how important he was to the Bulls' success over those years, then I don't know what's going to. But, you know, just head to head with Rose and Russ as a mid-range shooter, I mean, Rose is definitely a better mid-range shooter. Both of them take about 32%, give or take, of their shots from outside 10 feet. I think Rose might take like 0.5, 0.4% more of his like shots in his repertoire than Russ from mid-range. But regardless, it's a pretty slight difference from about 10 feet out into the 3-point line, where Rose shoots 43% for his career, whereas Westbrook shoots under 39% for his career. As for finishing around the rim, it's fairly close in terms of efficiency. Obviously, both of them are insanely athletic. If Trent wants to make that argument later about Russ being more athletic, you can make that. I personally think Rose is, but if you want to make that argument, completely fine. There's no like method to figure that out really. But you know, Russ has a higher finishing efficiency around the rim in the regular season, but Rose does in the postseason. So I feel like that's kind of comparing apples to oranges. But then as we move on to 3-point percentage, Rose is a career 31.5%, whereas Russ is about 30.5%. So again, Rose has that edge. And this is a big reason why so many people find, you know, fits for Rose in recent years as opposed to Russ. You know, a lot of guys, I mean, John has said it with the Lakers, where is Westbrook going to fit in, you know, so many times. Like, it's just his style of play, especially with that contract, doesn't fit in with a lot of different teams. Whereas Derrick Rose, you know, in recent years has been a much better shooter. Over the past 5 years, I mean, this has really become a beatdown. Rose is shooting about 36% from three over the last 5 years, and Russ is shooting 29% from three. And that's also considering this year where Rose has kind of seen a weird role right now because the Knicks want to go in a different direction, but they want to keep him as an assistant coach. He was getting inconsistent minutes. That's really hurt his 3-point percentage this year. Like without that, he'd be shooting like 37% if you didn't include this year at all. So compatible finishing efficiency. Rose has better mid-range efficiency. He's a better 3-point shooter. I mean, he's quite literally a more efficient scorer for his team. Then insert the fact that he also has a very high basketball IQ. It also provides for more efficient playmaking. And I mean, really, who wouldn't want a guy like that on their team if they had to choose between the two? I mean, it also says about Rose's willingness to adjust to what the team needs. I know this year, like early in the year, Russ did make a sacrifice finally to come off the bench, whereas Rose made that sacrifice years ago. And really, he's been thriving for many years because of it. In fact, when Rose first signed with Minnesota, I don't know how well you guys remember this, but Tom Thibodeau, he wasn't really sure. Like he wanted him on there as a veteran, but they already had Jeff Teague. I believe they had Tyus Jones at the time. So they told him you'd probably be getting minutes as small forward. And he said, I don't care. I'll play it. I don't see Russ ever doing that. Now, again, to be fair, I don't know if anyone's ever asked him to play a position like that. So to each their own, but I don't know. Just the willingness to sacrifice seems like something that Rose has bought into more than Russ over the last several years. And when he first came off the bench in Cleveland too, like he was accepting of that role. When he was the best player on the Pistons, because he was the best player on the Pistons in 2019, 2020, he did so as well. When he was the best player on the Knicks in a playoff run a few years ago, he did so as well, So just thinking about that. And then additionally in the playoffs, Rose tends to up his level of play more so than Russell Westbrook does. I mean, Westbrook averages more points and steals per game in the playoffs in more minutes, but also less rebounds and assists and blocks, and then also shoots worse from both the field and three compared to his regular season. I'm not comparing it to Rose individually. But as for Rose, compared regular season to the postseason, obviously he's going to get more minutes, but also compared to his regular season stats, he moves up in points, up in rebounds, up in assists, steals per game, blocks per game, better 3-point shooter, better free throw shooter. And he also averages only 3 turnovers a game to Westbrook's 4. So now brings me to efficiency in playmaking, where Rose has a higher assist to turnover ratio than Russ by about a tenth, which might not seem like a lot, but it can definitely add up with how many assists and turnovers both these guys have had in their careers. But over their careers, Rose, he's only had 2 games with 10 turnovers in it. That's like an average of 1 over every 7.5 seasons. And might I add, one of those games happened in 2014, 2015 against the Warriors in Golden State, who, if you guys remember that season, the last 5 months, they lost an early home game to the Spurs that year. But from mid-November until the end of the year, they only lost 1 game at home. And it was to the Chicago Bulls. And in that game that Rose had his most turnovers in a game ever, he also outscored, out-rebounded, and had a better shooting efficiency both from the field and from 3 than the eventual MVP Steph Curry in that game. And he led them to victory. And Jimmy Butler didn't even play in that game. And he hit the game-winning shot over Klay Thompson's face to win it in overtime. So if there's any argument for the best game in NBA history with 10 or more turnovers, that's got to be up there. If not the best, it's one of the best. As for Westbrook, he's had 12 of them over his 15-year career, 12 games of 10 or more turnovers. If you look at games where there's been 5 or more turnovers when they won MVP, Rose did have 9 games of that in his MVP year, but Russ had 35 of those. He didn't have a single turnover-free game his whole 2017 MVP campaign, which also, again, speaks volumes about Rose's IQ edge. And then I guess the last main point I'll leave it off with before I let Trent go, because I need some water. But, I think Rose is also probably the smarter defender of the two. You could obviously argue there's no complete package deal method where you're going to figure out who's the better defender. I think most people might say Russ just because his athleticism has lasted longer. But if you compare MVP days to D Rose of MVP days to Russell Westbrook, both are definitely high flyers, like I said, and they'll get up to block shots. But Rose's MVP year, he had a defensive rating of allowing one less point per 100 possessions. And the best defensive rating of his career was 101, which was, again, in 2011, 2012, that underrated season. Westbrook's best in his career, 102. Comparing offensive ratings for those respective years, Westbrook's was 108 and Rose's was 112. So you're looking at the net rating there for their best defensive year. Rose's was a plus 13 per 100 possessions, and Russ was only a plus 6. So it's definitely something that you got to take into account. Like I said, it's hard to, I guess, quantify them as both defenders. But personally for me, again, it all goes hand in hand with IQ. And personally for me, I'm taking Derrick Rose's IQ over Russell Westbrook's. That's just me. And again, I got more. I'm going to go through it eventually, but I'll leave it with Trent. We'll see what he says and whatever his points are. But that's my, I guess, first argument.
All right. Let me just go up with Russ's accolades, right? So Russell Westbrook, my baby boy, no homo, the best player, best point guard in NBA history, right? MVP 2017. He is a 9 times NBA All-Star. He's a 2-time NBA All-Star Game MVP 2015, 2016. 2015, he had 41 points in 26 minutes in that All-Star game. He's also a 2-time All-NBA First Team 2016 and 2017. And he's also a 5-time All-NBA Second Team 2011 to 13 to 2015, 2018. He's a 2-time All-NBA Third Team 2019 to 2020. And it's funny because that's the year everybody said Russell Westbrook is washed. I believe that was the Houston Rockets year. Everybody said Russell Westbrook's career is over, this and that. But somehow he's voted into the All-NBA Third Team. Interesting. 2009, he had NBA All-Rookie First Team. He was a 2-time NBA scoring champion, the 2015-2017. He also was a 3-time NBA assist leader of 2018, 2019, 2021, and is currently on the NBA 75th anniversary team, which I don't see Derrick Rose on that. Now, Russell Westbrook at 23 years old was in the NBA Finals. 23 years old. You talk about Derrick Rose winning an MVP, being the youngest. Congratulations. While he was winning MVPs, Russell Westbrook was in the NBA Finals, averaging 27 points a game, 6.6 assists, 6.4 rebounds at 23 years old. Now, everybody likes to bring up, they got beat by that Miami Heat team. Cool, right? But we're talking Russ and D Rose. So I'm not even you can't really bring up the team on that thing. But, and I ain't gonna lie. We talk about, I know Magic Johnson threw out there once that was probably one of the worst performance ever for a point guard. But then again, we give slack to a lot of the young players that tend to struggle the first couple of years. So if we're going to give slack to all those rookies that slack at the beginning of the first couple of years, well, Russell Westbrook is only 23 years old and averaging close to a triple-double. That's pretty impressive in your first final appearance. Also, Russell Westbrook holds the record for career triple-doubles with 211 currently, right? Before the triple-doubles, before Russell Westbrook had those average those 4 years of doing triple doubles, no one was doing that. After Oscar Robertson, no one was doing that. Russell Westbrook played it out so much that no one likes to talk about it. Now it's getting brought up again because Nikola Jokic is doing it. But ever since Russell Westbrook was doing it, people's like, oh, is he winning? Well, in those 4 years of 2020, he averaged 22 points a game, 44% from the field, 11.5 rebounds, 11.7 assists. So that was 2020. 2018, 23 points a game, 42.8% from the field, 11.1 rebounds, 10.7 assists. And then 2017, 25 points a game, 45% from the field, 10.1 rebounds, and 10.2 assists. And then lastly, 2016, 2017, 2015, whatever that year, 31.6 points a game, 42% for the 42.5% from the field, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists. But not only that, he's in his own lane, averaging triple doubles for 4 seasons. No one ever has done that in NBA history, right? And also, I want to bring up this point right here, is that 3 seasons back-to-back, all 82 games, 2008, 2009, and 2010. And the reason why I bring up that point is because when I was talking about earlier of how much games Derrick Rose average, he doesn't play as much. If we can go back to 2021, 78 games, 2017, 80 games, 2016, 81 games, and 2015, 80 games, and in 2012, 82 games, right? This is pretty incredible for a player that's not known for a shooter, and they tend to call him Westbrook and stuff like that. For athletic players, their career doesn't really last long because they're always attacking the rim. They're doing a lot of athletic moves. Injuries occur to happen, and that's what happened to Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose was probably the most athletic player in the NBA during that time. And what happened? Obviously, did it panned out well. So you was bringing up the fact of what was this? What was the point you brought up with the point you brought up with Derrick Rose allowing him to, the coach would tell him to do this and he would do it. What's that point you brought up again?
I think I know what you're talking about. So I think it was my 7th point, like his willingness to adjust to what the team needs. And many years ago, like when they asked him to play small forward, he was willing to do it for Minnesota. His willingness to come off the bench earlier. Basically, that's the stuff I was getting at.
Got you. So you was talking about pretty much that Minnesota, even New York Knicks year, right?
Yeah, now, and really with the Pistons too, and Cleveland when Isaiah Thomas came back. But yeah. Okay. So the years that you did bring up, if we're gonna talk about those years, right, 2016 till 2023, right, we can go from there because ever since 2015 he was off the Bulls. Through those years, Derrick Rose was not known as that superstar player anymore. He was not known as that guy. He was the Detroit Pistons year. You brought up he played 15 games that year. Played 15 games that year. Once again, no, not I meant 2019, 2020 for that.
For Pistons.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, I see it. Yeah.
Because the next year he got traded midway through, and it was a shortened year.
Oh, so he played 50 games. Yep, I see it.
Yeah.
Got you. So, but the point I'm trying to get at is though, right, during this time of his career, Derrick Rose wasn't known as that MVP. He wasn't known as the most explosive point guard in the NBA. He wasn't known as that dude anymore. So for a player that dealt with injuries, for a player who isn't who he was when years ago for his MVP season through 2008 was his rookie year. Obviously, I would give him up to maybe the whole Chicago Bulls tenure. He played pretty good, injuries, whatever. I give him that, and not even if that, right? But ever since he left that Chicago Bulls roster, he wasn't known as that guy anymore. So what I'm trying to get at pretty much is when you're not really that guy no more, you are obviously going to take the role because the NBA is a business. And so you're talking about being, non-selfish and this now do whatever. But I mean, if you're in a position, say you're in a position at work and pretty much, you're not that guy no more, but I'm trying to get to the point and I can't say it, but I think y'all know what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to explain it, but pretty much what I'm trying to get at is Derrick Rose wasn't that guy anymore at his points of his career. So when you're not known as that guy, you're not the superstar top players up in there. You just really just got to be like, you got to do it.
Accept what you can.
You got to accept your role and go from there. Cause at the end of the day, he has a family to take care of. He still got money to make. And so that's the point Derrick Rose was at his career. Right. And so that's what I was pretty much trying to get at. Also, I do want to bring up something real quick too, right? Going back to my other point about average games. Now I can explain it more. So he averaged 46 games average in a 14 year career. Now, in those 46 games average, pretty much, literally, I did the calculation and stuff like that. What I was trying to get at, right, when I brought up Russell Westbrook of, the longevity of him, being out there consecutively, being there for the team. John loves to say the best availability is, finish it, John. What's it called? The best
ability is availability.
Yes. And Derrick Rose was just not out there for his team. And so typically I played basketball, right? If I go out there and I play one game, but I had that one good game and I put up 25 points, your stats are already going to look better, than other players because you played less games. And that's the point I was trying to get at. Russell Westbrook was always out there every single night. And truthfully, Russell Westbrook's numbers, I'm not even gonna bring that point up yet, but you get what I'm trying to get at. He was out there less than Russell Westbrook. And so his numbers, so all the stats you brought up, efficiency, turnovers, shooting, everything attacking the rim, free throw, whatever the percentage, it's always going to look better than Russell Westbrook, just because he was out there less. So Russell Westbrook he averaged 71 games a year. 71 games a year in a 15-year season, which is pretty impressive for a player. Like, once again, I brought up that he's athletic, and athletic players don't really last long in this league. Now, I just want to bring up one more point, then I'll let you talk. So a lot of people love to bring up the triple doubles. Did it mean anything, this and that? Were they winning games? Blah, blah, blah. The case may be. I want to bring up this stat, right? They had a 73.2 win percentage of all time when he had triple doubles. So 73% is pretty much you're winning more than half of your games, right? So everybody's saying he's stat padding this and that. At the end of the day, he was carrying his team throughout those seasons. And there's a point where I'm gonna come up with after you rebuttal and stuff like that. But just wanted to bring just say that pretty much that he had a winning percentage when he put up a average of triple double. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna start off with.
Okay. I think you made some fair points, some valid points. I kind of had a feeling that's the direction you were going to go. But I mean, there's a few things that I will touch on. So I guess the first thing you brought up is, talking about injuries, of course, like with D Rose and stuff like that. And essentially saying, like, I know you said multiple times, this 46 game average, I think it was 46, you said, like this 46 game average for his career. So, I was looking at Westbrook's and stuff like that. And I believe Westbrook's is like about a little under 72 game average. 71. Yeah, 71.6 or something. I like calculated it. Meanwhile, there's other guys on here, that have 58 game average a season, 51 game average. Guys like Steph Curry or Kawhi Leonard, guys that I feel like a majority of NBA fans, I mean, I don't know where you sit necessarily on that, but I feel like a majority of NBA fans would give them the nod over Russell Westbrook, especially because, just because they're winning and like how much they contribute to that. Whereas even though you could argue like with Westbrook, I'll give it a few examples. Westbrook and Dwayne Wade. Westbrook has more total points, rebounds, assists, steals, comparable minutes, higher averages in those as well. He has more points, rebounds, about as many rebounds a game, assists, steals, about the same amount of minutes as Dirk Nowitzki. And same thing, even kind of with Chris Paul. He has more points, rebounds, blocks, while playing less minutes. He has an MVP, and Chris Paul doesn't. But even though Chris Paul doesn't have a ring, I feel like most people, at least for all those guys I just mentioned, would probably take them over Russ on their team. And the main factors that what I've seen, why would the NBA consensus from what I've seen consider Paul to be better at graders? Because even though he hasn't won, the two things to consider is first, his health in the postseason is not always there. So you got to account for that. And people account for that, especially with Chris Paul. And two, he also elevates his game in the playoffs to a better degree from his regular season form than Russell Westbrook. And those same two things can also apply to what we do about Derrick Rose, who does have a league MVP. And he's been the best player on a team that's got further in the playoffs than a Chris Paul-led team has. Because let's be honest, when they made the finals with the Suns, he probably wasn't the best player. He definitely wasn't the best player when they made the conference finals with Houston. So, Russ has been the best player on a playoff team at least twice, but you could argue 4 times with the 3 years after KD and with Washington. And he's never been out of the first round, never even forced a game 7.
30 seconds.
Shoot. Okay, I'll leave some of my rebuttal stuff. And so in 2 of those series, Russ' team was actually favored to win as well by the odds makers. The only time a Derrick Rose team was favored to win in the playoffs and didn't was with the Knicks. That wasn't even really a Derrick Rose team. It was supposed to be a Julius Randle team, and Derrick Rose picked up his slack. So just considering that, and before you even say anything like Russ was guarded by Ben Simmons in those playoffs or whatever, he wasn't, because Bradley Beal was guarded by him for 32 minutes. The main defenders were George Hill, Danny Green, and Tyrese Maxey in that series by Russell Westbrook. And Rose primarily was DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic. I'm running out of time, but by the next rebuttal, I'll have more for you, but I'll leave it at that right now. Probably not satisfied with it, but it is what it is.
I mean, all right. So I'm not. I'm just gonna throw more facts out there, and then if you want to rebundle from that, then you
3 minutes.
Yep, got you.
Mm.
So out of the 15-year career, Russell Westbrook been in the playoffs 11 out of 15. He has one NBA Finals appearance, 4 Western Conference Finals appearance, and in those playoffs, he has 2,727 points, 874 assists, and 794 rebounds. Now, I'm not sure if I'm mistaken, but I know Derrick Rose only made it to one Eastern Conference Finals, and that was the year that he had 62 wins. Also, Derrick Rose have never made it to the NBA Finals, and then also I do want to say this. You kind of already brought it up, and it kind of sucks, but anyways, I'm just gonna say it. When you brought up the field goal percentage of, a lot of people love to say that, Westbrook is Westbrook and West this and that, he's broken, right? So if we're gonna talk about that, Russell Westbrook, I'm just gonna say it all. He's 28th in scoring in NBA history with 24,125 points, but he took 8,626 shots. He took 19,734 shots, field goal attempts. He made 8,626, which rounds up to about 43%, 43.7% from the field. Also, he attempted 1,205 three-pointers made. I'm getting confused. He shot 3,959 attempted and made 1,205, right? Which is about 30% from the three-point line. Now, earlier, I remember you brought up that Derrick Rose blows out Westbrook in that field goal percentage for career, correct? You said that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, for mid-range, that was when I said blowout, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
But still, he has the efficiency edge.
Okay, right. So, and this may not even be to Garrett, it may be to just everybody in the world. So if everybody's calling Westbrook and this and that, Derrick Rose careers averages are 31.5% from the three-point line and 45.6% from the field, right? And he averaged 17 points a game, 3.3 rebounds, and 5.3 assists. Wow. If we look at Russell Westbrook, on the other hand, very, very similar in that fact. Of course, I lost the damn thing. Oh, career 22.5 points. He's shooting 43.7% from the field and shooting 30.4% from the three-point line. So why does one get called Westbrook, but one doesn't really get called more? You get what I'm trying to get at. So like they shoot their field goal percentage is their field goal percentage is very, very similar. So that's the only part that I'm super, super confused about. But hey, it is what it is. It comes to, right? Also, I'm just gonna stop right here because I have more things to go, but I'm not even gonna go from there. But that's just what pretty much I have to say about that.
So I have a great point about what you said about why does Derrick Rose get basically a free pass for that, whereas Westbrook does not. So up until the point from when he tore his ACL until 2018 with the Wolves, he had not had a healthy offseason where he could just focus on his craft instead of focusing on rehabbing. That was the first time in all those 6-7 years that he had a chance to actually work on his craft again, which is something that if you were watching him in 2013, 2014, you would notice that he was starting to look like an actual better three-point shooter. In fact, up until that point, that was his best three-point shooting year. And then he went down the one game and, so be it against Portland. But that year, up until the end of 2018, and I don't have the graphic up here. I'm kind of going off the top of my head, but I do have the stats here. And in those first 32 games of the season, he was taking about 3.5 threes a game and shot 46% from three. He was top 5 in the whole entire league in 3-point percentage that year. So just factoring in one off season where you can actually work on your craft instead of rehabbing an injury, I think it makes a lot of a difference. And so another thing I wanted to talk about that I didn't get to last time is like with these accolades that you brought up, for Westbrook. I mean, obviously accolades are different in all respects, just because there's some players, if you were going to base it off accolades, then I feel like everyone's list is going to look different than how it does right now for greatest of all time or something like that. But there's guys on here that, or at least when I made my top 50 list, I think like a year or so ago, guys like Chris Paul, who I mentioned, Pete Maravich, Elgin Baylor, George Gervin, Patrick Ewing, Dominique Wilkins. These guys don't have a league MVP. They don't have a championship, but I mean, I think most people would consider them top 50 all time or very close to. And some of them would probably be considered over Westbrook personally. So just something to keep into account is that like you can't just, I guess, waste so much on accolades. But at the same time, you know, I was kind of interested in one thing. I guess this is an accolade, not really, but I guess it is because the media votes on it. And so you were talking about like this longevity thing with Westbrook, where there's 10 seasons combined between Rose and Russ that they've gotten MVP shares, but Russ has this big longevity edge on Rose, yet only 6 of those 10 years he's gotten more MVP shares, and the other 4 Rose has actually gotten more MVP shares. Also, when Rose won MVP, he got a higher share of the MVP votes than Russ when he won his. Just something to keep into account. I also think in 2012, again, that's when Derrick Rose got injured, tore his ACL. They had the best record in the league. Like I said, they were top 5 in offense, top 5 in defense, top 5 in 3-point percentage. And they only played OKC once that year in OKC. And OKC won that game, but Derrick Rose did not play. Neither did Richard Hamilton. Both those guys combined were a plus 19.8 on the season when they were on the court, and they lost the game by about 14. So you could argue that they should have won that game. But at the same time, it was a lockout year, so they only played the one game in OKC. They never had a home game in Chicago. And the year before, both teams in the matchup, they both won their home game. If they were playing in the playoffs, the Bulls would have had a home court advantage. And if that trend followed through, the Bulls would have beat them in a playoff series if they got to the finals, which I do think they would have. You know, again, I personally think it's a little bit maybe misleading just because some of these guys, like I said, when I drew up the comparison with Wade and Kawhi and Curry and how Westbrook may have more total stats or better per game averages per se than some of these guys, it's, you know, the one thing that stands out is championships. Whereas, you know, other guys like Chris Paul, I think Chris Paul actually plays a big part in this whole debate just because he doesn't have a championship, yet he still gets, I guess, put in the same light. I don't know if you know like what I mean, where it's like he's more conducive to a winning environment, even though he still doesn't have a championship, but most people would rather have him on their team. But I'm kind of curious why that doesn't apply to Derrick Rose here. Because like I said, Derrick Rose, when he was the best player on his team, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? And they really never got a second chance. Usually there's always 1 year where you get that taste of experience, and then the next year you get back. You know, Russ in 2012 got that little taste of experience. You could actually argue in 2011 he got that experience and making the conference finals too. But then 2012 he made the finals, and then, you know, they never got back there. You know, of course, the next year he got hurt, but, you know, after that, there was a little bit of disappointment. And I think just the whole way that ended with him and Kevin Durant was disappointing. But again, like, I know that's another thing too, with them making the finals. Like you mentioned how Russ made it, but he wasn't the best player on his team. It was Kevin Durant. Many people would probably tell you that Kevin Durant, at least compared to 2012, more so than 2013, because LeBron was really good in 2013. Like some people would probably argue that Durant deserved MVP that year in 2012. And probably in terms of best seasons of players that didn't win an MVP, you could argue that he's right up there. So just factoring in that one guy was a second option on his team, the other guy was the first option on the team with the better record and more, again, over a 67 win pace. That team was going to be at least a top 2 regular season record since the turn of 2000. So,
all right. So a lot of things I heard into that. His statements were a lot of ifs. And then a lot of, a lot of judging on, the accolades at the end of not judging, maybe that's a bad wording, but like maybe misleading, like Garrett said. And I feel like when it comes to Westbrook's accolades, no one talks about it because all they see from Westbrook is the last few seasons, right? So it's recency bias, right? But I know everybody, and I know Garrett can agree, Russell Westbrook, through all his OKC years, probably was top 2 point guards in NBA history during those years. I mean, the dude was a baller. But that's not the point I'm trying to get at. I'm just going to throw all my facts at right now. Okay. So I named out the 4 years he averaged a triple double, which no one has done. And he has a winning percentage while doing that. Also, I do want to say this. The 2010-2011 season, that's the year Derrick Rose had, I'm going to go to the thing right now. Derrick Rose had 2,500 points. 2,026 points, 3 rebounds, and 600 assists. That was his, I think that was his MVP season, right? And during that, right, Russell Westbrook during that season, when we go back up to that, so remember the stats. Russell Westbrook during that year, he had 1,793 points, 379 rebounds, and 670 assists. So the point that I'm really just trying to get at is that Derrick Rose had an MVP season. I believe he was the first person to do that in NBA history with those stats. But Russell Westbrook wasn't far away from that at all. And that was probably Russell Westbrook. I'm not going to say his worst year, but he was still young and still getting better at that. Also, what I want to say, going to his MVP season, he's one of 2 players in NBA history to average a triple-double for a season. That year, he had 42 triple-doubles that year, and he became the first player to lead the league points and assists in multiple seasons. Also, I want to say, in the MVP season, he averaged about 31.6 points a game, which Derrick Rose had never done in his NBA career, has never. He shot 42% from the field, 10.7 rebounds, 10.4 assists, and that year he won MVP as a 6th seed. Now, we all know when you do MVP voting, typically the people that get MVPs or players are typically 1 or 2 seed. The fact that Russell Westbrook won it the year as a 6th seed is absolutely incredible. Now, let's just go to the roster that he was playing with. Let's go to the players that are currently not even in the NBA no more, the team that he was carrying that whole year. He had Alex Abrinas, not in the league no more. He had Steven Adams. Steven Adams was up and coming. He was still very young. He wasn't as Steven Adams as he is now, but he was still proven, right? They had Samaj Christian. I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't even know who he is. They had Norius Cole, a Miami Heat vet. They had Nick Collison, Ennis Freedom, Todd Gibson, Jeremy Grant. Now, when you heard Jeremy Grant, you're probably like, okay, Portland, Detroit Grant, but Grant wasn't as good as he is now, right? They had Josh Houston. They had Ursana Sylvia. They had Doug McDermott, Anthony Morrow, Cam Payne, Andre Roberson, Sabonis, and Sabonis wasn't as talented as he is now. He wasn't even good. That's why they traded him away. They had Kyle Singler. So that was a team that Russell Westbrook was carrying alone by himself. So half of these players that I named, some are still in the NBA, some don't even play in NBA no more. Also, what I want to say is Derrick Rose, he torn his ACL. And the year that he came back, and I love Derrick Rose, so I'm tight that I have to bring up this point in a sense. But a lot of people say if Derrick Rose was never injured, he would still be that top guy. Well, let's talk about Paul George. He broke his leg and still a superstar player in this league. We also could talk about Russell Westbrook. And what I want to bring up is the year he came back from injury, he averaged 16 points a game. He shot 35% from the field, 3.2 rebounds, 4.3 assists, and only played about 10 games that year, which is, once again, injury prone. But with Russell Westbrook, I know we all remember when Patrick Beverley torn his meniscus during the playoffs, right? He came back for the next year. And for Russell Westbrook, the next year, he averaged 28 points a game, 42.6% from the field, 7.3 rebounds, 8.6 assists, and made it to the Western Conference. So that excuse of Derrick Rose never got injured, that excuse of this and that, yes, I guess you can use it. But the same thing with Russell Westbrook. He torn his meniscus. He dealt with a lot of injuries. Russell Westbrook isn't as injury prone as Derrick Rose, but after every single year for Russell Westbrook, he always came back stronger. And he still played excellent basketball. And there was no excuse if Russell Westbrook this or that. It was only for Derrick Rose. Also, what I want to throw out there, too, is that when you look at, I know homeboy over here, Garrett, don't like accolades. But when you just want to compare the accolades for a sec, only thing that's really noticeable for Derrick Rose accolades is the MVP in 2011. He was a 3-time All-Star. And then he was all NBA first team 2011. But after that, he won Rookie of the Year in 2009 and 2009. All NBA All Rookie of the Year in 2009. But after that, Derrick Rose has not gained nothing, and we're in the 2023 season, guys. And a lot of people love to throw out there that Russell Westbrook's IQ, Russell Westbrook, a lot of turnovers and this and that, and it is true. Russell Westbrook turns the ball over a lot, but also, when you have the ball in your hand, frequently, like Russell Westbrook always had the ball in his hand, It's not an excuse to do it. But when you look at these other top tier players like a James Harden, they're averaging around similar turnovers around there too. And people are going to throw out there, well, he's averaging 10 assists. Well, Russell Westbrook is coming off the bench, averaging 7.5 assists. But when he's a starter, he's averaging around there too. So we could throw that out there because in 4 years, he averaged a triple-double, right? Also, I want to talk about that. He's top 10 in NBA history with assists with a 9,002, 24,000 points once again. In his career, he had 5 games with 50-plus points. He had 54 against Indiana, 51 against Phoenix, 58 against Portland, 57 against Orlando, and 50 against Denver. And he was 4th in the Rookie of the Year for the 2008-2009 season. So, Derrick Rose won that year, but it still shows that Russell Westbrook was still balling and he still was in the Rookie of the Year conversation. So pretty much that's what I got to say about Russell Westbrook. I mean, the 11 out of 15 in the playoffs, 4 Western Conference Finals appearance, playoff points, and all this other stuff. Derrick Rose can't even really compare about that. He hasn't even touched it. Unlike Russell Westbrook, he has been there for the moments and he has done his thing, man. So I always love you, Russell Westbrook. I always defend you. You're the best point guard in NBA history to me, man. And I love Derrick Rose, man. But the excuse of if he never got injured is this and that. But, Russell Westbrook torn his meniscus and came back and still averaged 28-plus points a game and made it to the Western Conference Finals.
First of all, I did have a question for you. So you said when Russ was at his best, I don't know if I heard you right, and I'm just like kind of blown away, or if I heard you wrong. Did you say he's top 2 or 3 point guard ever? Is that what you said?
No, for those years, right? So it was always Steph and it was always Dame, but it was always Russ.
So like best at that time.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, I'm like,
no.
Ooh,
but,
like that'll be like that might be something else. Like I don't know.
But I also do want to talk about, not just to break you up. Russell Westbrook in NBA history is going to be retired as, for point guards at least. He's always going to be. You could put him in top 10 conversation no matter what. So just with accolades alone.
Well, first of all, and
okay, but you go.
Well, I was just gonna say too, like it's interesting you use the word retired. I should say they just announced a few days ago, I think, that the Bulls have. I mean, I'm sure the Thunder will too, but the Bulls have unofficially retired D Rose's jersey. So when he's actually retired, they're gonna retire his jersey. And I'm sure the Thunder will do the same for Russ. But again, that's just like one team piece. But anyway, so I guess some of the things I'll touch on. I know you were talking about like Paul George and Westbrook's injury and like from the Patrick Beverley thing. I don't know about all that. Like, I know, like you could say like, well, these guys came back and these guys didn't. But, I feel like it's kind of hard to compare injuries. I feel like this is like the whole Tony Parker Kawhi thing, like in 2018, where Tony Parker's like, well, my injury is like 100 times worse than his and he's not coming back. And then he ended up leaving and then he did win a championship. But like the point is, like, it's hard to compare different injuries, even if it is like, okay, I tore an ACL, that guy tore an ACL. I think it's just a little bit different with who you have as your trainer, who you have as the doctors that are telling you what. And then like, you never know like which direction like they're going to have to go. You don't know how long they're going to rehab. You don't know what like strength and muscular training they're going to have to do to get back to where they were. But another thing I will say too is, talking about that 2011 team. So obviously back in 2011, the pace of the league was significantly slower than it has been in recent years. And that includes, I believe, Russell Westbrook's MVP year. But if you adjust, possessions to about, I think it's per 75 possessions, which is about 36 minutes per game or so like that. Rose's MVP stats would look more like 27, over 8 assists and about 5 rebounds a game, which again, it's not a triple double, but at the same time, I don't think he cares more about getting a triple double. I think he's always cared more about winning. That's been his like motto from the time he came into the league, is that he just wants to win. I've seen old videos about him when he came into the NBA. There were old videos when he was first, second year, and he walked around. I think it was a few months ago I was watching it. And he was like touring around like the Chicago Bulls place, and they showed like the 6 trophies. And he's like, that's the whole ambition. We're trying to get one of these, there's not a lot of players like that, and he's focused on his craft. I think, was it today or was it yesterday or something like that? Or it was almost 11 or 12 years to the day of when like all the all-stars came out and they're all dancing and celebrating. And Rose is just there. Like, he's focused on the game. So I think that tells a lot about like his mentality and where his mind's at. But, you know, overall, I think D Rose is probably represented with more respect than Westbrook. I mean, every teammate that I've seen him play with, they've only had good things to say about him. Even guys that haven't played with him, you know, like Steph Curry and stuff like that. Like, he basically, him and LeBron, I know LeBron played with him, but like they both echoed that he's a superhero, like after his 50-point game. Whereas for Russ, I mean, I think the players do definitely give him more respect than the media does. But still, there's some that point out the idea of him stat padding and focusing more on that than actually winning. And, you know, even just in terms of like net worth, I don't know how, I guess, accurate Sportskeeda is, but I did find on there that they estimate that Rose's brand overall is about 10 million more valuable than Westbrook's brand. So I guess that's also something to keep note of when we move down the line more and more, you know, when they're 10, 20 years retired and like we're focusing on their legacies. You know, even in 2019, like when you could argue, of course, I mean, Russell Westbrook, he was averaging a triple-double as well. But I mean, Derrick Rose is also having a great year based on the situation he was in, when everyone thought he was over, he was finished, and yet he was still top 2 in all-star voting. So I don't know. I mean, there's other things I could get into here. I personally think like down the stretch of games, like even though I will say Russ, his clutch stats are more impressive than probably people think. I think more people would probably lean toward Derrick Rose down the stretch of their games, just because I like his swagger and just the way that we've seen it both in the playoffs and the regular season. So that's probably, I mean, I could get more nitty gritty into this, but I don't want to make this like forever, but that's probably like the basis of it. I mean, overall, like they're both great. I'm not going to take away from like Westbrook and say like he's not a Hall of Famer. I think both these guys are Hall of Famers. So I don't know. That's just where I stand. I'm always, like you said about Westbrook, you're always going to defend him. I'm always going to defend D Rose. Yep. And I think, you know, obviously you might not agree, but I think there are definitely some valid points. You know, that there are ways that Derrick Rose had an upper hand on Westbrook, just like there's ways that Russell had an upper hand on D Rose. So I guess to each their own, but this is where I stand.
Oh, so I just want to talk about the injury thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's another, like, I'm gonna really say about that is you brought up training and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's excuses, right? Like, I mean, like, he don't have the right team around him, right? I mean, that's not really anybody else's fault. But
if I can interrupt real quick, just because look at the Chicago Bulls over the past several years and how many times that injuries have been, you know, at the forefront of the problems. Luol Deng, and not to get TOS, but he literally almost died in 2012, 2013 in the playoffs because, you know, basically Tom Thibodeau was exerting him so much. And I think he had like, it was like a lung problem. I don't know like the complete basis of it, but there's that. At least right now, there's the Lonzo Ball thing. Our organization has not had a good history with injuries over the last decade plus. So I'm just going to leave that out there.
I mean, like, but at the end of the day, that's no one's fault. That's like, you know, like, I don't think that's
right. But I'm saying like to hold that against D Rose, that's kind of unfair. That's something that you can't.
Okay, you know? So okay, cool. So another thing, and you brought up the All-Star game where I recently just seen him. He just standing there serious. Well, man, he was sitting there serious. I ain't never seen him win MVP in the All-Star game. Not once, not twice. You know, Russell Westbrook did it.
Who?
But not, huh?
Like win All-Star MVP?
Yeah.
Man, come on. Like,
but no, you brought it up though, right? You brought it up. You kind of brought up the point where he's just like he's sitting there chilling, and I'm just like, all right, well, I mean, he's so locked into the game. And then you talk about just winning real quick. I mean,
I was saying that like I don't think he's locked in the antics. I think he was just more focused on playing basketball.
Yeah, so he's more focused on winning. But so the main point he was just trying to really bring up is that he just cares about winning. Well, clearly it hasn't happened in his career because he only made it to one Eastern Conference Finals. That's only.
Has it for Westbrook?
He made it to the finals, and what everybody says. So you bring up
Kevin Durant, yeah,
right. So, but this is a Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose debate. So no one's talking about anything because I could have brought up the teams. I didn't. I kept the teams out for a reason. This is just thinking this and that. But anyways, at the end of the day, you make it to the finals. That's the hardest thing in NBA. That's it. And football, that's hard to make it to Super Bowl. No matter what, it's hard. Like even if you lose, win, it's hard, right? So everybody's going to get the credit for that. So you
Well,
just
it's
bring up.
hard also though with, like I said, injuries when it's your best player, not just your best player. Joakim Noah also went down in that same
I don't
playoff
want to
run.
hear the
That's
excuses
again with
though.
the injuries. And even the year before in 2011, they had Boozer out half the year,
These
and
are
they
just
had Joakim
excuses
Noah out
though.
half of the year. They had a 40-year-old Kurt Thomas and Keith Bogans. Both those guys started about half the season. Actually, Keith Bogans started every game, and they averaged 8 points a game or less together.
Like
So
to see the thing is about.
think about two guys that average 4 points a game starting in your
Okay,
lineup right now.
listen.
You wouldn't even make the playoffs.
Next man always
Play in.
steps up. Next man always steps up. That's the mentality. These players are getting paid millions of dollars. You got to step up. It happens. Injuries happen. Russell Westbrook dealt with these injuries with his team. They're like we acting like OKC didn't lose some key players in the postseason. Like I don't bring up injuries because like they're freak accidents, cool, but you got to still play through it. That's all
My
I'm saying. You got to play through it.
My
But hold up.
point that I'm
But let me just start
Go
real quick
ahead,
so I
go
can
ahead, go ahead.
just finish all my points, right?
Mhm.
Russell Westbrook is probably least respected compared to Derrick Rose, but who's really Russell Westbrook definitely plays a part. And this is the last thing I'm gonna say. The media destroys Russell Westbrook a lot. And so with the media doing that, it makes people like you, makes people like John that may not watch Russell Westbrook, who may not, go too deep in like I do, right? Like you go into deep in D Rose, so you can always defend it. But the media is always going to bash every little thing that they hear and stuff like that. So obviously the respect level for D Rose is there because he did some cool stuff for his mans. I mean, he got a Nike deal, and half of the money went to his boy and stuff like that. So there's a lot of respect. But let's not act like Malik Monk didn't just come out recently. Not Malik Monk, I'm sorry. Lonnie Walker said that was my best teammate I had. There's several teammates because you said that, people say that about Derrick Rose. Well, they say that a lot about Russell Westbrook. And the only reason why Russell Westbrook, the limelight's always on Russ, is because he went to the Los Angeles Lakers. So the Lakers is just a televised team no matter what. And then when you're on OKC and you have Kevin Durant on your team, you're always going to be watched, right? Russell Westbrook, for Derrick Rose, he was on Chicago pretty much his whole career, right? And his best years, we could say that, right? And back in the day, a lot of people loved watching Chicago and this and that. But what I'm trying to get at is pretty much the limelight's always on Russell Westbrook, no matter what, because the agenda that's already on Russ. He's probably he's like a top hated player in the NBA because of the media. And so the media literally bashed pretty much Westbrook's career, his legacy, and stuff like that. So I'm just saying the media just try to like throw him down. Derrick Rose is just calm. He don't really talk too much. He's just quiet. So that's the reason why I don't say too much about D Rose. But at the end of the day, I love Derrick Rose. At the end of the day, he's getting, the crowd's cheering for him because he hasn't played in freaking weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like just recently. Right? That would never ever happen to Russell Westbrook in his career. I'm just saying.
My two last things is, first of all, with I just feel like you're being a little inconsistent with the winning argument, just because if you want to go off pure winning, you win all the way till the end for a season as a championship, which none of them have, So to say a guy that's made it all the way, he's won multiple playoff series and got to the conference finals, is not considered winning. But then a guy who wins to get to the finals and still has the same outcome at the end is considered winning. I feel like that's inconsistent. Either they're both winning or they're both not winning. Because when D Rose made the playoff or made the conference finals, he was doing more winning than he was losing in that postseason. Same thing with Russ in 2012. But I just think you got to stay consistent with that, because that's a deep playoff run by both means.
Well, so I'm not the one that came up with that decision, because every time, this is why John should have never let you go, because now we're gonna go back and forth when it was just done and over with. So this is all John's fault. You should have just stopped it right there. So you go and talk about the inconsistent about winning, right? I never brought that up. That's just kind of the media and everybody else, that the announcers, and that's how that kind of got brought up.
So what do you think? What would you say?
My personal opinion, at the end of the day, right? Win or lose, and I love to say this because people do it to me. We still made it to the Super Bowl, right? Where was your guys at, right? Or we still made it to the championship. At the end of the day, the fact that your team, win or lose, you still made it there, bro. And I think that's the hard part, right? Like it's hard to go win 16, 20 games in the postseason, 16, and then go to the NBA Finals and win. That is extremely hard. So I think you got to put credit into that in the sense to be like,
I mean, my thing just with that is that, like, you know, when you look at both their guys' career as a whole, like, they're winning more than probably 95% of all the players in the history of the league still, you know, like, so you could compare it like that, even though both of them don't have a championship, or just the fact that they win more than they lose in their best playoff run. So that's where I guess we differ. The other, and my other point, my last point I was going to make is just, I guess with the media, I know you said like how they've been against Westbrook, and I agree, they definitely have, but there was also a time, and there still kind of is, like, it's weird, like they pick and choose weird times when to do it, that they are also against D Rose. I know the players as a whole are, you know, they're all in support of D Rose, but the media doesn't like him that much. Actually, if the media liked him, you know, just enough, you know, and they were on the players' side, he would have been an all-star in 2019, because the players gave him the vote, the fans gave him the vote, but the media didn't. So, I mean, like, and I'm not saying like they were wrong in doing so or whatever, but all throughout like 2012 until he left the Bulls, and even like the year after, whatever, they're like, oh, he left that random game against the Pelicans when he was on the Knicks, or oh, now he has to go to the trial. Oh, he's always injured again. Like, all these things about D Rose were blowing up so much. I think it's before social media became like as big as it is in recent years. Maybe that's why it's not as crazy, but sports shows all across the United States were talking about it like that too. Maybe it's just a little bit of a different time, and now like it's more so like anti Westbrook, but there still are people like that against Derrick Rose. I think one good example is Bill Simmons. But yeah, still, I'm that's something else that I think should be considered. Not comparing it by any means, but I think both of them have seen their fair share of backlash. But yeah.
Wow. Look at that. What a great debate. I loved all your points, Trent. I loved all your points, Garrett. I mean, that was just great. I mean, I was happy to hear Garrett be able to go, hear Trent go, be able to hear rebuttals on both sides. And then
we only went 1 hour. I could go a few more hours.
That's what I'm saying. That's 1 hour solid of debating, of rebuttal and all that. And then before we get out of here, I do got to give, I feel like, my answer to this, to be honest with you. And that is, look, man, prime to prime, in their prime. Okay. And some people might get mad at me, you know what I'm saying? Some people might get mad at me. Some people might say I'm walking the fence, but look, prime to prime. So in their primes, I'm taking Derrick Rose. Okay. But if we are taking as a whole, as a career, and if I have to pick a player that I have to put on my team and I'm starting a team. This is not just I'm trying to win a championship for 1 year. If I'm starting a team for years to come, I'm taking Russell Westbrook, only because of how much more he does on the court than Derrick Rose, as far as like other attributes of the game, man. But I already know Garrett's answer. I already know Trent's answer. But what I want to know is, I want to know the family's answer. So let us know in the comment section down below, man. Who do you got? Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, and why is your reason why you have one or the other? And I know this was a long video, man, but for the family out there that stay through the whole thing, man, we appreciate you guys. As always, don't forget to check out my boy Garrett's channel. Everything will be in the description down below. Social media, channel, all that, man. My boy T Riz got off his points today. But I mean, T Riz, you got any last words to say before we get out of here?
Listen, this is just all I'm gonna say, man. Listen, Russell Westbrook is still competing to win an NBA championship, and Derrick Rose is getting over freaking the crowd's chanting D Rose to come get in the game because he don't even play no more. That's all I gotta say. Because
can I jump in?
Because he wants to be a coach, or he wants to be a scout, because he can't ball no more. That's what it is.
First of all, that's not true, because prior to when he got hurt last year, which I know you're gonna be like, oh, here we go, he's getting hurt again.
I just bring up a lot of ifs, hurts, and excuses. That's all I hear from you.
Prior to when he got hurt last year, he was the best player on the Knicks those first 2 months of the season. Any Knicks fan will tell you that straight up, because it was the consensus from Knicks Twitter, Instagram, everything like that. But what I will say is, he's currently on contract. He's on a team option. They already said they're most likely not going to pick it up. And then he's going to be a free agent, and then he'll get to go wherever he wants. And you'll see the market for D Rose here in a few months, and you'll see there's going to definitely be more teams out there than all these teams that are just, struggling. If you noticed, Miami Heat, LA Clippers, Chicago Bulls, my Chicago Bulls, Washington Wizards were the main suitors. I think the big theme there is that they don't know what they're doing. That's all I'm going to say.
Wait, but on Twitter, I don't know if you, because you like to troll on Twitter. I think you brought up 4 teams, and I think Clippers were part of the team that said that was going to win the championship. But that's none of my business, though. I had a great
Oh, they're
episode.
not.
I love y'all.
That's called my troll. That's called my trolls.
Oh, so your troll. So your troll. I think your troll
Yeah.
had some actually legit teams that was actually going to win it, though. So I don't know how trolling
Really?
that was.
Except
I
you're
had to
missing
go
the
back.
Lakers.
I had to go back to the suite. Nah, he didn't have Lakers in there.
Yeah. I know. I'm saying he was trolling. That's how I know he was trolling because he didn't have the Lakers.
But no, there was we can end the episode, but I swear there was some teams that I gotta go look back at the thing. He put up some good teams that winning it though. Oh, he brought up okay. Anyways, I love y'all. We out of here.
We love y'all, man. We out.